The metal corridors of the starship Harmony's Edge hummed with quiet energy as it drifted through empty space. Commander Vextar stood on the bridge, his 6 arms folded behind his back as he watched the view screen. Outside, chunks of rock and metal floated in the darkness where a solar system once existed. "Another year, another memorial patrol," muttered his second-in-command, Officer Creighton. The reptilian alien checked his instruments with practiced boredom. 300 years of coming here, and there's still nothing but space dust. Vextar's large black eyes reflected the dim light from the control panels. As a member of the Reelan Empire, he took his duties seriously, even the meaningless ones. The Galactic Council required these annual visits to the Sol system ruins. It was their way of honoring the dead humans, though most species had long forgotten why they bothered. "Show some respect," Vextar said quietly. "An entire species died here. 20 billion beings turned to ash when their star exploded." The bridge crew continued their work without much interest. Most of them had never met a human. The species had been extinct for centuries, known only through old records and fading memory files. They were described as curious creatures with only 2 arms and strange hair covering their heads. Their technology had been primitive compared to the great galactic powers. Their ships were slow, their weapons weak, and their lifespans embarrassingly short. But the humans had possessed something unusual. They never gave up, no matter how hopeless their situation became. They explored dangerous regions of space that other species avoided. They asked endless questions and always wanted to learn more. Some older aliens remembered them fondly, saying humans brought an odd kind of energy to any room they entered. Communications Officer Zeppelin looked up from her station, her tentacles dancing over the controls. "Commander, I'm picking up some strange readings from Sector 7. "Define strange?" Vextar replied, walking over to examine her screens. "Energy signatures that don't match natural phenomena. The patterns suggest organized technology, but that's impossible. Nothing has lived in this system for 3 centuries. Officer Creighton laughed, his scales rattling slightly. "Sensor ghosts. This graveyard always plays tricks on our equipment. The leftover radiation from the supernova creates false readings." Zeppelin frowned, her large eyes studying the data more carefully. "Sir, I've been monitoring this system for 15 years. I know what sensor ghosts look like. This is different. The signatures are too organized, too purposeful." Vextar examined the readings himself. Strange energy patterns pulsed from an area that should have been empty space. The signals appeared and disappeared in regular intervals, almost like a heartbeat. But the computer analysis showed nothing solid in that location, just floating debris from humanity's destroyed homeworld. "Could be pirates using the asteroid field as a hiding spot," suggested Creighton. "Or maybe smugglers have set up a secret base in a dead system that the Galactic Council patrols regularly." Vextar shook his head. "That would be suicide." Zephelin's tentacles moved faster across her controls as new data appeared. "Commander, the energy readings are getting stronger. Whatever's out there, it's definitely artificial technology." Vextar considered their options. Protocol demanded they investigate any unusual activity in the Sol system, but his ship was a ceremonial patrol vessel, lightly armed and designed for peaceful missions. If hostile forces were hiding in the asteroid field, the Harmony's Edge would be no match for them. "Take us closer, but keep our distance," he ordered. "Full sensor sweep of Sector 7, and prepare a message drone to the Galactic Council in case we encounter anything dangerous." As the ship moved through the debris field, the crew grew quiet. Floating around them were pieces of humanity's last moments, chunks of metal that might have once been buildings or vehicles, fragments of what could have been art or technology. All of it cold and lifeless, tumbling endlessly through the void. The humans had sent their final transmission from this very area. Vextar had read the historical records many times. It was a simple message broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Earth Defense Command. Our sun is going critical. We cannot evacuate in time. Please remember us. Please remember that we tried." The galactic community had mourned appropriately. Several species sent condolence messages to empty space. A few memorial services were held on distant worlds. But life moved on quickly among the stars. New conflicts arose, new species joined the council, and humanity became just another entry in the vast catalog of extinct civilizations. Sensors are picking up multiple contacts, Zeflin reported, her voice tight with concentration. The readings are unlike anything in our databases. These energy signatures don't match any known technology. Before Vextar could respond, every screen on the bridge suddenly flickered. The normal blue glow of their displays turned amber, then red. Warning lights began flashing as their communication system activated without being touched. "What's happening to our equipment?" Creighton demanded, his clawed hands dancing over the controls. "Something is accessing our communications array," Zeflin said, her tentacles moving frantically. "The signal is coming from outside the ship, but I can't locate the source." The main view screen went dark. Then slowly, text began appearing in the ancient human language. Most of the crew couldn't read it, but the computer's translation system activated automatically. "Unknown vessel, this is Earth Defense Command. We have monitored your patrol routes for the past several years. Your dedication to honoring the dead is noted and appreciated." Commander Vexistar felt his blood turn cold. His four hearts began beating faster as the impossible message continued to appear on their screens. "We have been listening to galactic communications for some time now. Your species appear to be in distress across multiple systems. Pirate attacks, territorial disputes, resource conflicts. The galaxy has become a dangerous place since our departure." "This is impossible," Creighton whispered. "Humans are extinct. Everyone knows that." The message paused as if the sender had heard him. Then new words appeared. "Reports of our extinction have been greatly exaggerated. We have been busy." Suddenly, every communication frequency in the sector erupted with the same transmission. It wasn't just reaching their ship anymore, but broadcasting across space to every vessel, station, and planet within 50 light years. "This is Earth Defense Command calling all vessels and stations. We have received multiple distress signals from across the galaxy. Criminal organizations attacking civilian targets, stronger species preying upon the weak, innocent beings crying out for help with no one answering their calls." Vextar stared at the view screen in complete shock. The message was being broadcast, with more power than his entire ship possessed. Whatever was sending it had technology far beyond anything the primitive humans should have been capable of building. "We have spent 3 centuries preparing for our return. We have watched from the shadows and learned much about the current state of galactic civilization. We are disappointed but not surprised by what we have observed." The transmission paused again. In the silence, Vextar could hear his own breathing and the nervous shuffling of his crew. Then came the final message that would change everything. "To all beings in distress, know that your calls for help have been heard. To all who prey upon the innocent, know that your actions have consequences. This is Earth Defense Command. We are coming home. Help is on the way." The screens went dark. Normal communication resumed, but across the galaxy, on thousands of ships and stations, the same impossible message had been received. Humanity, extinct for 3 centuries, had just announced their return to the stars, and they sounded very different from the weak, primitive species everyone remembered. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 6 hours straight. Representatives from dozens of species filled the great chamber on Station Convergence Prime, their voices mixing into a chaos of fear and confusion. Senior Advisor Krelthon slammed his massive fist on the central podium, his gray skin flushed with anger. "Order, we must have order." The towering alien's voice boomed across the chamber until the noise died down to worried whispers. "The human transmission has been confirmed on over 2,000 communication networks," Krelthon announced. "Every major shipping lane, every military frequency, every civilian channel. Someone or something is claiming to be the extinct human species." Representative Yaelnis of the hegemony rose from her seat, her crystalline body catching the light. "This is clearly a hoax. Some terrorist organization trying to create panic across the galaxy. Humans have been dead for 3 centuries. We all know this." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The idea that humanity could have survived made no sense to anyone present. Their sun had exploded. Their entire solar system had been destroyed. No species could survive such complete annihilation. But who has the technology to broadcast across half the galaxy simultaneously? Asked Elder Thoxwyn of the Mining Guild. His weathered face showed deep concern. That level of communication power requires resources that even our greatest civilizations don't possess. Admiral Grentlov of the Defense Force stood up, his military uniform gleaming with medals. Whatever this is, we cannot allow it to continue. If someone is impersonating a dead species to spread fear, they must be stopped immediately. While the council argued, something was happening in a remote corner of space that would change everything. The mining colony of New Petra floated in, the asteroid belt of the Theta system. Foreman Dulcamar stood in the control center watching his workers extract precious metals from the floating rocks. It was dangerous work, but it paid well and kept his family fed back on the homeworld. His peaceful day ended when the alarm started, screaming, "Sir, we have multiple contacts approaching at high speed," called out his assistant, Nex Ara. Her 4 eyes were wide with fear as she studied the sensor readings. 30 vessels, all matching profiles from the Savage Nebula pirates. Dulcmar felt his stomach drop. The Savage Nebula was home to the most brutal pirates in the sector. They took no prisoners and left no survivors. His mining operation had minimal defenses, just enough to scare away small raiders. "Get everyone to the evacuation pods," he ordered. "Send a distress signal on all frequencies. Maybe the Defense Force can get here in time." But he knew the truth. The nearest military base was 3 days away at best. His people would be dead or captured long before help could arrive. The pirate ships dropped out of hyperspace like hungry predators. Their leader, Captain Vorkeen, appeared on the communication screen with his scarred face twisted in a cruel smile. "Attention, mining scum," Vorkeen snarled. "Surrender your cargo and maybe we'll kill you quickly instead of slowly. You have 5 minutes to decide." Dulcmar activated the emergency beacon and prepared his final message. "This is Mining, Colony New Petra in the Theta system. We are under attack by pirates from the Savage Nebula. 30 hostile vessels. We have no military escorts. Anyone receiving this message, please help us. We have families. We have children aboard these stations." The response came faster than seemed possible. A new voice cut through the communication channels, speaking in the ancient human language before switching to galactic standard. "This is UES Indomitable. We have received your distress call. Help is coming. All civilian vessels take shelter immediately." Dulcmar stared at his communication console in confusion. UES meant United Earth Ship, but that was impossible. There were no human ships anywhere in the galaxy. Captain Vorkeen laughed when he heard the transmission. Did someone just claim to be human? What kind of joke is this? He turned to face his fleet. "Find whoever is playing games and destroy them. Then we'll finish with these miners." The pirate sensors detected a single ship approaching at impossible speeds. It was moving faster than anything in their databases, but it was alone against 30 battlecruisers, 1 ship against our entire fleet. Vorkeen's laugh echoed across the pirate communication network. "This will be entertaining." The unknown vessel dropped out of hyperspace and appeared on their screens. The pirates fell silent as they saw something that defied all understanding of ship design. The craft was massive, larger than anything they had ever seen, but moved with the grace of a fighter. Its hull was dark as space itself, covered with patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living metal. "This is Captain Jiwoo of the United Earth ship Indomitable," came the calm voice over all frequencies. "You are attacking innocent civilians. Stand down immediately or face the consequences." Captain Vorkeen recovered from his shock and started laughing again. "Human? You expect us to believe you're from that extinct rat species? Open fire. Show this pretender what real weapons can do." 30 pirate ships unleashed everything they had. Energy beams, particle cannons, and missile swarms all converged on the single human vessel. The space around the Indomitable lit up like a new star's enough firepower to destroy a small moon struck its position. When the light faded, the human ship was completely undamaged. Not even its dark hull showed scorch marks from the massive attack. "Your weapons are noted and found insufficient," Captain Jiwoo said calmly. "This is your final warning. Withdraw or be destroyed." Vorkeen's confidence cracked. "Impossible. Nothing can survive that kind of firepower. What are you? We are what humanity became when we stopped asking for help and learned to help ourselves. The Indomitable opened fire. What happened next would be discussed in military academies for generations. The human ship's weapons tore through space itself, creating tears in reality that swallowed pirate vessels whole. Energy beams of unknown design cut through the strongest armor like it was paper. The pirates' shields, capable of stopping battleship, weapons collapsed under the first shots. In less than 10 minutes, 15 pirate ships were completely destroyed. The remaining vessels tried to flee but found their hyperspace drives somehow disabled by human technology. Surrender and prepare to be boarded, Captain Jiwoo announced. You will stand trial for your crimes against innocent beings. The face that appeared on Dulkmar's screen was definitely human. 2 eyes, hair on the head, and the familiar facial structure he had seen in old history files. But this human looked different from the records. His skin showed scars that spoke of countless battles. His eyes held a hardness that came from seeing too much suffering. Most strangely, parts of his body seemed to be enhanced with advanced technology. This is Captain Jiwoo of the Earth Defense Force, the human said. Are there any casualties among your people? Dulkmar found his voice after several attempts. No casualties, but you're human. Your species is extinct. Captain Jiwoo smiled sadly. Reports of our death were premature. We've been gone, not dead. There's a difference. Around the mining colony, more human ships began to appear. They seemed to materialize from empty space using some kind of advanced stealth technology. Each vessel showed the same impossible design and overwhelming firepower. How many ships do you have? Dulkmar asked in amazement. Enough, Jiwoo replied, simply. We've had 3 centuries to prepare for our return. We've been listening to distress calls like yours across the galaxy. We're here to make sure the innocent are protected and the guilty face justice. As Dulkmar watched, human boarding teams moved to secure the surviving pirate vessels. They worked with military precision, but also showed mercy to surrendering enemies. This was not the weak, primitive species from the history books. The galaxy thought we were lost, Captain Jiwoo said as his image began to fade from the screen. They were wrong. We were just getting started. The transmission ended, leaving Dulkmar staring at empty space where 30 pirate ships had threatened. His people just hours before. Half were gone completely and the rest were now under human control. Across the galaxy, word began to spread. Humanity had returned to the stars, and they were nothing like anyone remembered. The Great Assembly Hall of Convergence Prime had never been so crowded. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy filled the curved seats that rose in circles around the central speaking platform. The air hummed with nervous energy, as beings who rarely agreed on anything found themselves united by confusion and fear. Admiral Hyun-Ki stood at the center of it all, completely calm despite hundreds of alien eyes watching his every movement. He was tall for a human, with gray streaks in his black hair and the bearing of someone who had commanded starships for decades. His uniform was simple, but bore symbols that no galactic database could identify. Behind him, visible through the massive windows, hung the human flagship, Resilience. The vessel dwarfed even the greatest ships in the Council fleet, its dark hull covered with patterns that seemed to shift when viewed directly. Smaller human ships surrounded it in perfect formation, their mere presence making every military officer in the assembly extremely nervous. Senior Advisor Krelthon called for silence with less success than usual. The gathered representatives were too shocked by what they had witnessed over the past weeks. Human ships appearing across the galaxy, stopping pirate attacks, rescuing stranded vessels, and demonstrating technology that made their best weapons look like primitive tools. Admiral Hyun-Ki of the Earth Defense Force, Krelthon said, clearly struggling with the words. You have requested this audience to address questions about humanity's return from extinction. The Council recognizes your right to speak. Hyun-Ki stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the vast chamber without any amplification device. Honored representatives, I stand before you not as a ghost of the past, but as a voice from humanity's future. We have watched your deliberations about our existence with interest. Some of you believe we are imposters. Others think we are terrorists using advanced technology. A few even suspect we are time travelers. A ripple of nervous laughter echoed through the assembly. The Admiral's calm demeanor was unsettling to beings used to passionate political speeches and dramatic declarations. The truth is simpler and more complex than any of your theories, Yunki continued. Humanity is not extinct. We never died when our sun began its final collapse. We simply left. Representative Yaelnis rose from her seat, her crystalline form catching the light. Impossible. The historical records are clear. Your sun went supernova. Your entire solar system was destroyed. No evacuation fleet could have saved 20 billion beings. You are correct, Hyun-Ki agreed. No evacuation fleet could have saved us. So we saved ourselves in a different way. The Admiral activated a holographic projector that filled the center of the chamber with images. The assembled representatives gasped as they saw Earth as it had been 3 centuries ago, green and blue and beautiful, orbiting a dying yellow star. When our scientists determined that our sun would become unstable, we faced a choice. We could beg the galaxy for help, as we did in our final transmission, or we could solve the problem ourselves. The hologram changed to show massive construction projects on Earth's surface. Enormous engines, each the size of mountains, being built across the planet's continents. The scale was breathtaking and terrifying. We chose to move our world. Elder Thoxwin of the Mining Guild leaned forward in disbelief. Move a planet? That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would exceed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Hyun-Ki finished. You're absolutely right. It took us 50 years to build the stellar engines, another 30 to perfect the calculations, and 20 more to actually begin the journey. The hologram showed Earth's final days in the Sol system. The massive engines fired in perfect sequence, their combined power slowly pushing the planet out of its orbit. As the dying sun grew smaller behind them, Earth began a journey into the dark space between galaxies. We spent 3 centuries traveling through the void beyond the galactic rim, the Admiral explained. During that time, we had no choice but to become completely self-sufficient. We developed new technologies, new ways of thinking, new approaches to problems that had seemed impossible to solve. The images changed to show what humanity had built during their long exile. Cities that glowed with clean energy, farms that could grow food in space, factories that could construct starships using only the raw materials of asteroids. Most shocking of all were the humans themselves, many showing technological enhancements that improved their natural abilities. We watched your galaxy from a distance, Yun-Ki said. We monitored your communications, studied your conflicts, learned about new species and new technologies. What we saw concerned us greatly. The hologram displayed a map of the galaxy marked with red indicators. There were thousands of them scattered across every sector and growing more numerous each year. Pirate attacks, territorial wars, stronger species preying on weaker ones. The galaxy had become more dangerous during our absence, not less. 2. Many beings cried out for help with no one willing to answer. Commander Grentlov of the Defense Force stood up, his face flushed with anger. The Galactic Defense Force responds to distress calls. We protect innocent civilians. When you can, Hyun-Ki replied gently. When you have ships available. When the politics allow it. When the profit margins are acceptable. We don't blame you for the limitations of your system, but we also cannot accept them as permanent. The Admiral gestured and the hologram showed recent events across the galaxy. Human ships appearing at pirate attacks, rescuing stranded vessels, stopping conflicts before they could escalate. In every case, they arrived faster than any official response and resolved situations with minimal violence. We returned to the galaxy not as conquerors but as neighbors. We have the power to take whatever we want, but we want only to help those who cannot help themselves. Representative Zoktan of the Trade Federation stood up, his multiple eyes narrowing with suspicion. What do you want in return? No species shares technology without expecting something back. We want you to be better than you were when we Left. The simple answer hung in the air like a challenge. Hyun-Ki continued before anyone could respond. We're not asking you to worship us or serve us. We're not demanding tribute or territory. We want to see a galaxy where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. Where species work together to solve problems instead of fighting over resources. Where distress calls are answered quickly and completely. Elder Chindar of the Scholarly Assembly raised a tentacle. And if we refuse? If we don't want your help or your judgment? Admiral Hyun-Ki's expression hardened slightly. Then you'll discover that humanity spent 3 centuries learning not just how to build better ships and weapons, but how to be very patient and very determined. We won't force you to change. But we also won't allow you to continue harming innocents without consequences. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. These humans weren't asking for permission or seeking approval from the Council. They were simply informing the galaxy that things were going to be different from now on. You see us as the primitive species that begged for help 3 centuries ago, Hyun-Ki said. You remember us as weak and desperate. But desperation taught us strength and isolation taught us self-reliance. We learned to survive when survival seemed impossible. The Admiral gestured to the massive human fleet visible through the windows. We returned to the galaxy not as the species you once knew, but as what we became when no one else would help us. We are what happens when humanity stops asking for salvation and decides to create it ourselves. Representative Yelna stood again, her voice uncertain for the first time in centuries of political debate. What happens now? How does the galaxy move forward with this new reality? Admiral Hyun-Ki smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. Now you have a choice. You can work with us to build something better than what came before. Or you can continue as you always have, knowing that humanity is watching and will act when innocent lives are at stake. He paused, looking around the vast assembly at faces representing dozens of species and thousands of worlds. We've given you our answer to the distress signals we've been hearing across the galaxy. The question now is, what answer you'll give to the call for a better future. The silence that followed was deafening. General Coxavel of the Torvan Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought called Eternal Victory. Through the viewports he could see the largest military fleet ever assembled in galactic history. 3,000 warships from the Torvan Empire stretched in perfect formation across space, their weapons powered and their crews ready for battle. These humans think they can intimidate the galaxy with their fancy ships and mysterious technology. Coxavel growled to his staff officers. His scarred face showed the anger that had been building since humanity's announcement to the Council. They've forgotten that real power comes from strength, not from hiding in the darkness for 3 centuries. Colonel Brixton, his second in command, studied the tactical displays with concern. Sir, our intelligence reports suggest their technology is far beyond anything we've encountered. Perhaps we should consider negotiation instead of direct confrontation. The general's forearm slammed against the command console simultaneously. Negotiation is for the weak. The Torvan Empire has ruled this sector for 500 years because we crush anyone who challenges our authority. These pretend humans will learn what real military power looks like. For weeks, General Coxavel had been planning this demonstration. The humans had embarrassed the galaxy's established powers with their casual display of superior technology. Pirate fleets that should have taken days to defeat were destroyed in minutes. Rescue operations that required massive resources were completed by single human vessels. The Torvan Empire could not allow this challenge to go unanswered. If humans could act with impunity, other species might begin to question Torvan authority. Military discipline across the galaxy would collapse if everyone believed some mysterious super technology could solve any problem. Sensors detect human ships approaching, announced Communications Officer Teclor. 12 vessels, moving at standard speeds. General Coxavel laughed, a sound like grinding metal. 12 ships against 3,000? Either they're completely insane or they're about to demonstrate why they've been hiding for so long. The human fleet came into visual range, and the Torvan bridge crew fell silent. The ships were unlike anything in their databases. Each vessel moved with impossible grace despite their enormous size. Their hulls seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making them difficult to track even when visible. "This is Captain So Young of the United Earthship Vengeance," came a calm female voice over the communication channels. "You have assembled a military fleet in neutral space without authorization from local governments. State your intentions." General Coxavel activated his own communication system, making sure his message would be broadcast across the entire human fleet. "I am General Coxavel of the Torvan Empire. You humans have disrupted the natural order of this galaxy with your interference in legitimate military operations. We are here to restore proper authority. By attacking 12 ships with 3,000? Captain So Young's voice carried a note of amusement. "That seems excessive even by Torvan standards. Your species was extinct. You should have stayed that way." The general's anger made his voice echo through the bridge. "Prepare to learn why the Torvan Empire has never lost a major battle." The response was immediate and shocking. "General Coxavel, you are making a mistake that will cost the lives of many beings under your command. Withdraw your fleet now, and no harm will come to anyone." "The time for threats is over," Coxavel snarled. "All ships, open fire, show these ghosts what real weapons can do." 3,000 Torvan warships unleashed their full arsenal simultaneously. The space between the fleets erupted in a storm of energy beams, particle streams, and explosive missiles. The combined firepower was enough to turn a small moon into cosmic dust. When the light faded, all 12 human ships remained completely undamaged. "Impressive display," Captain So Young commented. "Our sensors indicate you just expended approximately 60% of your total ammunition reserves. Would you like to try again, or shall we demonstrate our response?" General Coxavel stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. His sensors confirmed what his eyes had seen. The human ships showed no damage, no energy drain, no indication that they had even noticed the massive attack. "Impossible," he whispered. "Nothing can survive that level of concentrated firepower." "You're thinking in terms of traditional defensive systems," the human captain explained calmly. "We've had 3 centuries to develop better approaches to survival." The human ships began to move, and what happened next defied every principle of space combat that military academies had taught for thousands of years. The 12 vessels spread out in a pattern that seemed random, but somehow allowed them to avoid every weapon that targeted them. They moved like living creatures rather than mechanical constructs. When Torvan ships fired at their positions, the humans were already somewhere else. When targeting computers tried to predict their movements, the ships changed direction in ways that should have torn them apart from gravitational forces. "They're using some kind of phase technology," reported the Torvan science officer. "Their ships appear to be shifting partially out of normal spacetime." "Then target them when they phase back in," General Coxavel ordered. "No ship can stay out of phase indefinitely." But the humans weren't just evading, they were attacking. The first Torvan vessel to fall was the cruiser Eternal Hammer. A beam of unknown energy struck its main reactor, but instead of causing an explosion, it simply drained all power from the ship. The mighty warship went dark and began drifting helplessly through space. "What kind of weapon was that?" Colonel Brixton demanded. Before anyone could answer, 6 more Torvan ships went dark. The human weapons didn't destroy their targets so much as neutralize them completely. Within minutes, dozens of the Empire's finest warships were floating powerless in space. "All ships, focus fire on the lead human vessel," General Coxavel commanded. "Concentrate everything we have on a single target." 1,000 weapons targeted Captain So Young's ship simultaneously. The Vengeance disappeared from sensors just as the attack reached its position, then reappeared behind the Torvan formation. Its return fire struck the dreadnought Conquest of Worlds, and the massive ship simply vanished from existence. "They're not just disabling ships now," the science officer reported with panic in his voice. "That last weapon created some kind of spatial tear. The Conquest was pulled into a dimensional rift. The battle continued for 4 hours, but it was less a fight than a demonstration. Human ships moved through the Torvan formation like predators among prey. Their weapons struck with impossible precision, disabling key systems without destroying entire vessels. When Torvan ships tried to retreat, they found their hyperspace drives mysteriously offline. General Coxavel watched his mighty fleet reduced to helpless scrap metal floating in space. Of 3,000 warships, fewer than 100 remained operational. The humans had done it all without losing a single vessel. "This is Captain So Young to all Torvan vessels," came the calm announcement. "Prepare to be boarded. Medical teams are standing by to treat your wounded." Medical teams? General Coxwell couldn't understand what he was hearing. "You're going to help our injured soldiers?" Of course, they were following orders from their government. The crime was in giving those orders, not in obeying them. Human boarding craft approached the disabled Torvan ships. Instead of the brutal assault troops the general expected, medical personnel in white uniforms began transferring to his vessels. They moved with military precision but carried healing equipment instead of weapons. Dr. Yunji appeared on the main screen of the Eternal Iwi Victory. She was clearly human, with the distinctive features and hair that marked her species, but her medical equipment was beyond anything the Torvan Empire possessed. "General Coxwell, our sensors indicate you have extensive injuries from your previous military campaigns, old wounds that never healed properly. We can fix those problems." The general looked down at his twisted left arm, broken years ago in battle and never fully repaired. "Why would you help someone who just tried to kill you?" "Because healing is always better than hurting," Dr. Yunji replied simply. "We didn't return to the galaxy to add more violence to what already exists." Over the following hours, human medical teams worked throughout the defeated fleet. They repaired injuries that Torvan doctors had declared permanent. They cured diseases that had plagued soldiers for years. Most amazingly, they restored Colonel Brixton's legs, lost in battle 2 decades earlier. "Your technology can regrow entire limbs," Brixton said in wonder as he stood for the first time in 20 years. "Our technology can do many things," Dr. Yunji confirmed. "We prefer to use it for healing rather than harming." General Coxwell received treatment for wounds he had carried for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to be without pain. As human medical devices repaired damage that had accumulated over decades of warfare, he found himself staring at Captain So Young's image on his communication screen. "I don't understand," he admitted. "We attacked you with everything we had. We came here to destroy you. Why are you helping us?" Captain So Young's expression was patient but firm. "Because this is what we learned during our 3 centuries in exile, General. Strength without mercy is just another form of weakness. Power with O." The observation deck of Convergence Prime had never hosted such an unusual gathering. Representatives from species that had been enemies for centuries now worked side by side, studying data streams that filled holographic displays throughout the massive chamber. The defeat of the Torvan Empire's fleet had changed everything about galactic politics. General Coxwell, his scarred face now free of the chronic pain that had twisted it for decades, stood beside Admiral Hyun Ki as they watched the combined fleet exercises taking place outside the station. Torvan warships flew in formation with human vessels, their crews learning new tactics that emphasized protection over destruction. "Your people learn quickly," Admiral Hyun Ki observed, as a group of Torvan fighters successfully completed a complex rescue maneuver. "Military discipline translates well to humanitarian operations. My soldiers are eager to prove themselves worthy of the mercy you showed us," Coxwell replied. "But I worry we may not have time to complete their training." The Admiral's expression darkened as he gestured toward the long-range sensor displays that dominated the center of the chamber. "You're right to be concerned. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected massive energy signatures approaching from beyond the galactic rim." Colonel Minho of Human Intelligence stepped forward, his face grim as he activated a new set of holographic projections. "Ladies and gentlemen, we need to discuss something that humanity has been tracking for the past 50 years. We are about to face an enemy that makes our recent conflicts look like minor disagreements." The assembled representatives fell silent as images filled the space above them. Massive mechanical constructs, each one larger than a space station, moved through the darkness between galaxies. Their hulls were black as the void itself, covered with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "We call them the Devourers," Colonel Minho explained. "They are an ancient machine intelligence that travels between galaxies, consuming entire star systems to fuel their continued expansion. Our long-range scouts have been monitoring their approach for decades. Elder Thoxwin, of the Mining Guild, leaned forward, his weathered features showing deep concern. How many ships are we talking about? Not ships, the colonel corrected. Mobile planets. Each Devourer construct is the size of a small world, equipped with technology that can literally eat stars. Our estimates suggest they have consumed at least 17 different galaxies over the past million years. Representative Yaelnis rose from her seat, her crystalline form catching the light as she moved. Why hasn't the Council been informed of this threat? If humanity has known about these Devourers for 50 years, why wait until now to warn us? Admiral Hyun-Ki answered calmly. Because until recently, we weren't certain that this galaxy was worth saving. Too many species spent their time fighting each other instead of working toward common goals. We needed to see if you could change before we asked you to face extinction. The brutal honesty of his words struck the assembly like a physical blow. These humans had been evaluating the entire galactic community, deciding whether they deserved to survive. And what conclusion did you reach? Asked Commander Grentlov of the Defense Force. That you have potential, the Admiral replied. The way various species have responded to our return, the willingness to adapt and learn, the growing cooperation between former enemies. It gives us hope that this galaxy might be different from the others. Colonel Minho activated new displays, showing tactical analyses of the approaching threat. The first Devourer scouts will arrive in the outer systems within 6 months. Their main fleet follows approximately 1 year behind. Based on our observations of their previous campaigns, they will begin by testing our defenses with probe attacks. What kind of weapons do these Devourers use? General Coxville asked, his military mind already analyzing the tactical situation. They turn entire star systems against their inhabitants, the colonel explained. They can destabilize suns, redirect asteroid belts, and corrupt planetary atmospheres. Traditional space combat tactics are useless against an enemy that treats planets like ammunition. The chamber erupted in worried conversations as representatives tried to comprehend the scale of the threat. Dr. Yoonji, who had been studying medical scans of Devourer technology, stepped forward with her own grim report. The Devourers don't just destroy civilizations, she announced. They assimilate them. Our analysis suggests they have absorbed the knowledge and technology of hundreds of species over the millennia. Each galaxy they consume makes them stronger and more adaptable. Then how do we fight something like that? Demanded Elder Chindar, of the Scholarly Assembly. Admiral Hyun-Ki gestured toward the mixed fleets visible through the observation windows. Together, humanity spent 3 centuries preparing for this battle, but we always knew we couldn't face it alone. We need every species, every technology, every unique perspective this galaxy can provide. Captain Tae-jin, who had been working with alien crews to integrate their ships with human technology, activated a holographic display showing proposed fleet compositions. We're not asking anyone to abandon their own strengths. The Rillan shield, technology, combined with Melodian strategic algorithms and Torvan tactical discipline, creates defensive capabilities that none of us could achieve alone. But will it be enough? Representative Zalktun of the Trade Federation asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Honestly? Admiral Hyun-Ki looked around the chamber at faces representing dozens of species. We don't know. The Devourers have never faced organized resistance from an entire galaxy before. Previous civilizations fell to them one species at a time, never working together. Colonel Minho brought up new images showing Devourer assault patterns from previous galactic invasions. Their strategy depends on creating chaos and division among their enemies. They corrupt communication networks, turn allies against each other, and exploit every weakness in interspecies cooperation, which is why our recent progress is so important, Captain Tae-jin added. The trust being built between former enemies, the shared technology, the joint training exercises, all of it will be essential when the real battle begins. Dr. Yoonji stepped forward with a datapad containing her latest analysis. There's something else you need to know, The Devourers aren't just machines. They're a collective consciousness made up of every species they've ever absorbed. When we fight them, we'll be fighting the combined knowledge and tactics of hundreds of civilizations. The implications of this revelation sent a chill through the assembly. They weren't just facing superior technology, but the accumulated wisdom of entire galaxies that had fallen before them. However, Dr. Yunji continued, that might also be their weakness. A collective consciousness that large might have difficulty adapting to truly unexpected behavior. They understand logical tactics, proven strategies, and calculated responses. What they might not understand is the kind of stubborn, irrational determination that kept humanity alive when our sun died. General Coxwell nodded slowly, understanding, dawning in his scarred features. You're talking about doing things that make no tactical sense. Strategies that should fail but succeed anyway because the enemy can't predict madness. Not madness, Admiral Hyun-Ki corrected gently. Hope. The willingness to attempt impossible things because the alternative is unacceptable. It's what separated humanity from other species 3 centuries ago, and it might be what saves this galaxy now. The assembled representatives began to understand what the humans were proposing. Not just a military alliance, but a fundamental change in how galactic civilization approached seemingly hopeless problems. The outer monitoring stations have detected the first energy signatures, Colonel Min-ho announced as new data streamed across his displays. Devourer scouts are entering the edge of our galaxy. The invasion has begun. Through the observation windows, the combined fleets began moving into new formations. Human ships with their impossible technology worked alongside Torvan battlecruisers, Rillan shield ships, and vessels from dozens of other species. For the first time in galactic history, former enemies were preparing to stand together against a threat that could destroy them all. The Devourers have consumed 17 galaxies, Admiral Hyun-Ki said quietly as he watched the massive fleet preparing for battle. They expect this galaxy to fall like all the others. They don't know that this time they're facing something they've never encountered before. What's that? Asked Representative Yaelnis. The Admiral smiled grimly as the first reports of contact with Devourer scouts began coming in from the outer systems. A galaxy that refuses to give up, led by a species that learned how to survive the impossible. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin. The battle raged across 7 star systems simultaneously, turning the edge of the galaxy into a war zone unlike anything in recorded history. From the command bridge of the flagship Resilience, Admiral Hyun-Ki watched tactical displays that showed the true scope of the Devourer invasion. Hundreds of the massive constructs had emerged from dark space, each one the size of a small planet, and equipped with weapons that could crack worlds in half. Their dark hulls absorbed starlight as they moved through the outer systems, leaving trails of dead space behind them. Enemy contact in the Vega system, reported Communications Officer Seiron, her young face tense with concentration. The Devourers are attempting to destabilize the primary star. Torvan 3rd Fleet is requesting immediate support in the Altair sector, added Colonel Min-ho. General Coxwell reports his shield generators are failing under concentrated fire. Admiral Hyun-Ki studied the holographic battle map that filled the center of the bridge. Red indicators showed Devourer positions, blue marked Allied forces, and yellow represented civilian evacuation routes. The enemy had scattered their attacks across multiple systems, forcing the Galactic Alliance to divide their forces. It's the same strategy they used in the Andromeda Galaxy, he observed. Create too many crisis points for defenders to handle, effectively. Force us to choose which worlds to save and which to sacrifice. Captain So-Young's voice crackled over the communication system from her position near the front lines. Admiral, the Devourers are adapting faster than we anticipated. They're learning our tactics in real time and developing countermeasures. Through the viewports, Admiral Hyun-Ki could see the devastating results of Devourer weapons. Entire moons simply vanished as exotic energy beams unmade their atomic structure. Space itself seemed to burn where their reality-warping technology had passed. Dr. Yunji, what's the status on civilian evacuations? The Admiral asked. The Chief Medical Officer looked up from her coordination displays, exhaustion clear in her features. We've successfully evacuated 80% of the populations in the outer systems, but the Devourers are moving faster than our worst-case projections. The inner systems have maybe 6 hours before the enemy reaches them. And our losses? Severe. We've lost over 400 ships from various species. The Melodian 7th Squadron was completely destroyed defending the Procyon evacuation routes. The Rillan defensive line in the Tau Ceti system is barely holding. Admiral Hyun-Ki closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of every life lost in this impossible battle. When he opened them again, his expression had hardened with resolve. Signal all fleet commanders. We're implementing Protocol Omega. Colonel Minho turned from his intelligence console, surprise evident on his face. Sir, Protocol Omega hasn't been tested in actual combat conditions. The risks are acceptable compared to watching this galaxy burn, the Admiral finished. Seiran, open a channel to all Allied vessels. The young communications officer's hands flew over her controls. Channel open, sir. Admiral Hyun-Ki's voice carried to every ship in the massive fleet scattered across 7 star systems. All vessels, this is Admiral Hyun-Ki. You've fought bravely against an enemy that has destroyed countless civilizations. You've proven that this galaxy is worth saving. On ships throughout the battle zone, beings from dozens of species listened to the human admiral's words while explosions lit up space around them. The Devourers expect us to follow logical tactics. They've defeated every enemy they've faced because those enemies fought the way machines would fight. Calculated, predictable, rational. A massive Devourer construct fired its primary weapon at the Torvan flagship Eternal Victory. General Coxwell ordered an impossible maneuver that should have torn his ship apart, using gravitational forces to slingshot around a gas giant and strike the enemy from an unexpected angle. Today we show them what happens when hope fights logic, when determination faces calculation, when the impossible becomes possible because we refuse to accept defeat. Captain Tae-Jin led a combined squadron of human and alien vessels in a direct assault on a Devourer that was consuming the Vega system's outer planets. Instead of attacking its weapons or engines, they targeted the geometric patterns on its hull that seemed to serve no tactical purpose. The result was spectacular. The patterns weren't decorative. They were part of a complex neural network that connected all Devourer units. When the patterns were disrupted, the massive construct began moving erratically, its weapons firing randomly. All units target the hull patterns on enemy vessels, Captain So-Young broadcast. Ignore their weapons and shields. Hit the designs on their outer hulls. Dr. Yoon-ji made a discovery that changed everything. While treating wounded crew members from a damaged Devourer construct, her medical scanners detected something impossible within the machine intelligence. Admiral, you need to see this, she called from the medical bay. The Devourers aren't just machines, there are organic components buried deep in their core systems, actual living beings connected to their neural networks, survivors from conquered species, Admiral Hyun-Ki asked. Not just survivors, volunteers, beings who joined the Devourers willingly because they lost hope in their own civilizations. The machine intelligence doesn't just conquer galaxies, it convinces them to surrender. This revelation spread through the Allied fleet like wildfire. They weren't just fighting machines, but the accumulated despair of 17 galaxies worth, of beings who had given up on the possibility of victory. Communications Officer Seiran made the breakthrough that turned the tide of battle. While monitoring Devourer communications, she detected something that their translation computers had missed. Admiral, the Devourers are trying to communicate with us, she announced. Not threats or demands. They're asking why we won't surrender. Put it on the main screen, Admiral Hyun-Ki ordered. The view screen filled with an image of the Devourer collective consciousness. It appeared as a swirling mass of lights and geometric patterns, but underneath the alien display was something recognizably desperate. Your resistance is illogical, the collective voice echoed through the bridge. We have consumed 17 galaxies. We possess the combined knowledge of millions of species. We offer you absorption into our collective, where your consciousness will persist forever. Why do you choose extinction instead? Admiral Hyun-Ki stepped forward to address the entity that had destroyed countless civilizations. Because extinction is permanent, but defeat is temporary. Because hope doesn't require logical justification. Because we've learned that impossible. Things become possible when you refuse to give up. We do not understand, the Devourer Collective replied. Your tactics should not succeed. Your strategies violate basic principles of warfare. Your weapons are inferior to ours. Yet you continue to inflict damage on our forces. That's because you're thinking like machines, the Admiral explained. You've absorbed so many species that you've forgotten what it means to be truly alive. Life isn't logical, it's stubborn, it's irrational. It refuses to accept that some problems can't be solved. Around the battlefield, the tide was turning. Allied forces had abandoned conventional tactics entirely, implementing strategies that made no sense but somehow worked. Ships flew directly into enemy fire, using their destruction as weapons. Crews abandoned their vessels to personally plant explosives on Devourer hulls. Entire squadrons performed maneuvers that should have been suicidal, but resulted in devastating attacks on enemy weak points. The Devourers, designed to counter logical responses, found themselves completely unable to predict or counter the Galactic Alliance's increasingly desperate and creative tactics. Your species taught the galaxy something we had forgotten, General Coxavell reported from his battered flagship. That losing is only permanent if you accept it. Captain So Young led the final assault on the largest Devourer construct, the Command ship that coordinated their entire invasion fleet. Instead of targeting its weapons or engines, she aimed for its core consciousness chambers, where the absorbed beings from conquered galaxies were stored. This is for every species you convinced to give up hope, she announced as her ship's weapons tore through the construct's reality-warping defenses. The destruction of the command ship created a cascade failure throughout the Devourer fleet. Without their collective consciousness to coordinate attacks, the massive constructs began retreating toward the galactic rim, their invasion plans shattered by an enemy they couldn't understand. As the last Devourer ships disappeared into dark, Space Admiral Hyun-Ki addressed the exhausted but victorious fleet one final time. Today you proved that this galaxy is different from the 17 that fell before us. Not because we're stronger or smarter, but because we're too stubborn to accept defeat. The Devourers will think twice before threatening another galaxy, knowing that somewhere out here is a group of beings crazy enough to make the impossible happen. Months later, on a restored Earth orbiting a new sun in a carefully chosen star system, Admiral Hyun-Ki stood in the same observation deck where he had first addressed the Galactic Council. Through the windows, he could see ships from dozens of species arriving daily, bringing immigrants who wanted to be part of humanity's impossible dream. You kept your promise, said General Coxavell, joining.